There's nothing more annoying in the world than having a street sweeper outside your window. It's quite frustrating when you're trying to record videos. Almost as frustrating as bad Humvee drivers, but luckily this guy recovers. Unfortunately, he leaves me in a pretty bad spot. But what's going on, guys, in the works? And we're playing a little Donphan Peak, which is probably one of my favorite maps in the entire Battlefield game, or Battlefield 3, that is. Maybe not the entire game, because there's some really good ones like Sharkey Peninsula. I really like that one. All the Karkan maps are just really awesome. But we're using the PP2000 today, kind of. My intentions when I was doing these sessions of games was to get some PP2000 gameplay, because the other day I did the UMP video where I kind of talked about how the UMP and the PP2000 were kind of conjoined at the hip. They used to be pretty much the same weapon for the most part. They had slightly different quirks here and there, but for the most part, almost the same weapon. Now it's kind of done like a 180. The UMP is off in its own little world. It's got that really weird damage model, which we talked about, the 35 damage up close, or actually 34 damage up close, but it drops off a lot. I would say really damage model-wise, the most comparable weapon to the PP2000 now, oddly enough, is probably like the M5K? I think the M5K is pretty similar. It has the 25 damage up close, but then drops off to 13.75, so they're pretty comparable. Their fire rates are astronomically different, but that's typical of Battlefield 3. Usually the biggest difference in weapons is around their fire rates. Fire rates tends to be what people either gravitate towards or against. I mean, if you don't like high recoil weapons, a lot of times you don't like high fire rate weapons. But this gameplay in particular was an interesting one. I had it labeled on my hard drive LOL because I had a little bit of everything. I went into it with the intent of getting some PP2000 gameplay, and instead it turned into a Jake does everything. He drives the Humvee poorly. And watch that right there. I just ran that guy over. At least I thought I did, but let's watch it back in slow-mo. You can clearly see that guy is invincible, and he goes right through the Humvee. He acts like it ain't no thing. Bounces right off of him. So, I've seen some latency in Battlefield 3, but I think that may take the cake. That may be one of the biggest examples of the latency that exists in Battlefield 3 sometimes. But I finally gotten set up with this Humvee. We may be disabled, but that's not going to stop the big old 50 cal on top from doing some work. I feel like it's one of the few mounted machine guns in the game that actually does kill people effectively. It kills them much quicker, at least in my eyes, than like the tank's mounted turret. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just the optical is clear. It's a lot easier to get people within your sights, but I know there's a lot of people on the other side of that wall right now, and this is a really bad heli pilot. And you should know that if you're a bad heli pilot, you should probably not be flying around me like that, because I will probably kill you. But thankfully for that guy, I can now add the PP2000 to my list of weapons that I've shot people out of helicopters with, and that is an ever-growing list. I think I've got a majority of the sniper rifles, almost all the assault weapons, working on some of the support ones, and I think it's funny to kind of keep track of that. I've actually gotten in with a handful of pistols as well. As you see, Mantis actually gets stuck in that weird glitch that's been going around where you actually have no control of your body and you look like you're frozen, and you're just kind of got your arms up to your side. I think that's pretty funny. And we almost get ambushed while I'm sitting here watching him do that. But the PP2000 is a good weapon for defending yourself. That 25 damage up close means that it can actually compete with, the M16. If you're on target first, you're getting some headshots, you can outshoot some of the weapons. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the M16 in the fact that it just doesn't really do anything super well, but it's pretty average in a lot of stats. Now, the 650 fire rate isn't the best in the world, but I find are we going to get two in one game? Indeed we are. What an unprecedented event in the works video to get two chopper pilots in one game. Unfortunately, I can't claim my prize. I can't get past this stupid wall, and by the time I get my crossbow out, I get murdered by that guy with an AEK. So that was unfortunate that I couldn't claim the chopper, but that's all right. We will spawn into a chopper of our own and do some work. But back on topic, because I'm being really bad today about staying on topic. The PP2000 is pretty average. I mean, 650 fire rate's not the best. I mean, there's lower in the game. It's pretty much on the low end of the spectrum. But like I said, the 25 damage, the low recoil, your shots are usually hitting, and that's one of the cool things about the PP2000. I think it's a pretty viable option. It's been in my underused weapons videos maybe once. I think I did a PP2000 on it. But I wouldn't say it's super underused. I think it's underappreciated is the better phrasing for it. I think there's people out there that know how good the PP2000 can be. But I just don't think that it really can compete in some people's eyes with the high fire rate, MP7, or even like, I mean, if you're going to use a PDW, oftentimes people are going to use the P90 or the MP7. Personally, I'd say that's the two PDWs that I see most often, but every now and then you will see someone who's got a lot of PP2000 kills, and you'll look at him where he's at on the scoreboard, and he's doing really, really well. So I think there is a lot that can be learned from a weapon like the PP2000. Because it's a really good all-purpose weapon. Like I'm doing here, I'm just kind of running around, and you wouldn't really call Damavant a, quote, close quarters maps, but there's areas where you have to go close quarters. There's areas with really long lines of sight, and it's nice to have a weapon like the PP2000 that can do high damage up close. And when I say high damage, I mean in comparison to, like, let's say the MP7 or the P90, stuff like that, they only do 20 damage as opposed to the 25, which is like the standard damage. I think that's the one disadvantage to any weapon like the MP7, just because it does only do 20 damage up close, even though it does have a pretty high blistering fire rate at, like, what is it, like 950 or whatever, which is really high. It can usually make up for the fact that it only does 20 damage, but I think for the most part, if you're on target first with an M16 and you're getting headshots, 50 damage can happen almost instantaneously, and by that point, the MP7 has a hard time catching up. And I think that's one of the good advantages of the PP2000 is the 25 damage, moderate recoil, almost the most easiest in the world recoil to control. And I think that's what makes it good at all ranges, good up close, good at long range, a good overall weapon. But I promise you guys, I am done gushing over the PP2000. You're probably asking yourself, Jake, how many kills do you actually have with the PP2000? Well, you've got me. I don't have a ton of kills with the PP2000. I actually am still working on my mastery tag on this particular weapon. It's the last one of the PDWs that I need to finish up for that challenge. It won't take long, though. I just haven't sat down and finished it off because I was live streaming a lot of the PDWs. And if you're around that live stream, I was pretty close to finishing this bad boy up. But I'll get there eventually. I will get there eventually. Now, when I used to play on Xbox, I had a ton of PP2000 kills, though, and that was before it was patched. So I do know how this weapon works. I know that it's been through some changes, some good, some bad, but I think it stood the test of time. It was a really popular gun in the beta. I don't see it used a lot, though, so maybe try it out if you're looking for an all-purpose weapon that can go on any kit. In my experiences, it works really, really well on the recon kit if you want to use it to get behind enemy lines. If you can sneak up on 3 or 4 people, the fact that you've got 41 rounds that can do 25 damage up close and the slow fire rate makes it really easy to stay on target, you can take out a lot of those people pretty easily. So I can suggest it if you want a good PDW that does everything well. But if you missed one of my past videos, now's a chance to catch up, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.